So I got some flack recently from some PlayStation bronies who were very upset that I dared to call into question the value proposition associated with the PlayStation VR 2. Basically, I said this thing costs $550 freaking dollars, and so they better have a slot of high quality games that justify that expense, especially because this is like not backwards compatible. You can't use it on your PC. Like, this is all it is, right? Just doesn't make sense.
Through Super Chat.
Thank you, Ron
I
Vier.
have to drink to come up with a funny, witty comment, so just take my money instead. Haha.
Relatable. Thank you for the $19.99. That's very, very generous. Thank you so much. Yeah, or like Phil is saying in chat, or it's 879 Australian dollars if you want to get it in Australia. The bundle for it is like $1,000 in Australian dollars. So it's like, it's ridiculous. Okay, so I brought into question whether or not the value was actually there. And you would have thought that I like sacrificed a virgin puppy on that video. People lost their minds. I think it was shared probably to a Discord server or a Twitter page or a subreddit or something about like PlayStation fanboys, because they all came in. I can see the average watch duration plummeted right around this time down to like 75 seconds. People would come in, type out their comment, dislike the video, and leave. They didn't even watch it. So it seems to me, usually when that's the case, that there's a little bit of insecurity tied with the fanboys when they get that defensive. Because like, if you're calling into question like The Last of Us, they won't go that aggressively defending it, because like it's ridiculous to claim that The Last of Us is like a terrible game or garbage, right? Because everybody pretty much agrees that no, that's not actually the case. Like, you don't have to like it, but you can't argue that Naughty Dog is not good at making games. Like, they are pretty clearly. But with this, they're very, very sensitive about it. And so I want to check out these reviews that just dropped for the PSVR 2 and for the major launch title for the PSVR 2, which is Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is the Horizon Zero Dawn's Horizon Forbidden West inspired spinoff. So we're going to check it out. I haven't seen any of this. I don't know what it's going to be. I hope it's awesome. I hope this is the Breath of the Wild to like PlayStation Switch. Like, I hope that this is the title that makes it worth $550. I hope this game is so good that it basically demands $550 to experience it. I'm not totally convinced that'll happen, but I'm hopeful that happens. So let's get into it.
Horizon Call of the Mountain knows what its job is: to ride the popularity of Horizon Forbidden West and spearhead Sony's new foray into virtual reality gaming, the PlayStation VR 2. It really goes for it by placing less of a focus on the expansive story of Forbidden West and much more on spectacle, often wowing with the sights it places in front of you. On that level, it's a remarkable technical showcase that lets you have a good deal of excitement when taking the handbrake off and handing you control of its exhilarating combat. It's therefore a slight shame that it often operates at a much more relaxed pace, which does allow for you to frequently take in the beauty of its world, but prevents itself from thrilling consistently from start to finish. When it does all click though and those heights are hit, a very fun time is there to be had.
We haven't come this far to get struck by lightning. Alright, I think we're clear.
Similarly to how a Disneyland ride borrows from whichever film it's based on, Call of the Mountain takes the Horizon experience and condenses it into something much more bite-sized while trying to keep that same flavour. This is exemplified best by the Pirates of the Caribbean-like opening, in which your peaceful river cruise is rudely interrupted by the likes of a soaring Stormbird and a towering tallneck Dinobot. The first time you see the scale of some of these creatures really is a sight to behold, not only from the shift to true first-person perspective emphasising their true size, but with their presence felt further thanks to the haptic feedback felt in both each controller and the headset itself, as you quite literally feel the ground shake with every step as these massive machines pass by. It's a real showcase for the PSVR 2 right off the bat, with huge spectacle blending with small detail, right down to the delicate ripples your fingers make in the water and the rude splashes made by the feet of these giant machines. Blockbuster opening aside, over the course of its roughly 6-hour campaign, Call of the Mountain takes the essence of Horizon's gameplay and boils it down into a much more manageable set of tools that works in VR. Rocky landscapes to explore,
He's doing like a quick dash thing. And I don't know, that would make me so motion sick. Because you see, he like will quickly shift left to right.
Down into a much more manageable set of tools that works in
Right
VR.
there. I think that would make me so motion sick. Oh. Yeah, man, still not convinced to buy one. It's starting at $8.79. Yeah, for Australia. It's crazy.
Rocky landscapes to explore, hostile machines to take down, puzzles to solve.
Like, this needs to be a 10 out of 10.
What's notable, however, is that this is very much a linear experience that stands in sharp contrast to Zero Dawn or Forbidden West's vast open worlds. An inquisitive mind is occasionally rewarded with fun side activities, such as stacking rock cairns or collectible archery targets to hit, but mostly you'll be guided down a funnel path. This narrow approach naturally works well in VR, even if some of the inherent exploration that Horizon normally offers is lost.
Guess this is why they needed a climber.
Now is the time to say that if you suffer from any level of vertigo, this may not be the game for you. I'm not too terrible with real heights, but here I did start to feel a little queasy when looking down at some of the ludicrous distances I could fall from. There are quite a few opportunities for potential plummets as well, thanks to the sheer amount of climbing you're asked to do. Climbing cliffs, climbing vines, climbing ice walls, climbing rock faces by lodging dual pickaxes into them, almost so much climbing that you may find yourself wanting to climb the walls of your house as well. Now, I wasn't naive enough to think that a game called Call of the Mountain wouldn't involve some climbing, but I was taken somewhat off guard when I found that it really is the majority of what you'll be doing here, especially in its early hours. Climbing isn't overly challenging, but honestly, reaching for handhold after handhold gets quite dull after you've scaled your third or fourth outcrop. It does get slightly more interesting once tools such as the grappling grabcast are introduced, and the immersion of it all as the wind swirls around your ears and the excellent music swells as you reach the next peak is undeniable. Although some ascents offer slightly more excitement than others, I can honestly say I never found climbing to be consistently fun. It's frustrating then that it dominates much of what you'll be doing in Call of the Mountain, in particular when compared to its much less frequent but infinitely more exciting combat sections. Largely taking place in mini arenas, these gladiatorial battles against all manner of unfriendly machines are often the highlight of each mission. Armed with the signature Horizon weapon of a bow and arrow, you'll quickly find yourself aiming for enemy weak points using the PSVR 2's impressive eyeball tracking tech, and then quick dodging out of the way of flying melee attacks before ducking and weaving your head.
That's kind of cool. So it uses the eyeball tracking to help you aim. That's kind of fun. I'll give him that.
Out of the way of projectiles.
Stacking rocks remind me of something else.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
It's a set of
Valhalla.
combat options that gradually builds over time as well, as new ammo types are introduced and your arsenal expanded. As stronger foes present themselves, naturally more firepower is needed, and with it, the levels of excitement to find increase. A thrilling fight against the colossal Thunderjaw being a particular highlight. Preparing yourself for encounters becomes increasingly more important as you build all sorts of elemental arrows in a pleasing crafting system that lets you manually attach arrowheads, explosives and flights, thus further creating a tangible connection to the world. More gratifying than crafting arrows though is of course firing them, and in this regard Call of the Mountain has really nailed it. There's a real pleasing ping to the way each arrow flies off of the bowstring, and haptic feedback tickles your palm. And then an even greater thrill as it slams into whatever is unfortunate enough to be in its way and sets them aflame thanks to explosive blaze. Unlike the climbing, it just never gets old to watch sparks fly and machine parts fall off as the fundamentally brilliant Horizon combat successfully makes its way into the virtual reality space. Puzzles also pop up here and there, and again serve as a welcome break from climbing. Did I mention there's a lot of climbing? The problems are sometimes fun, but never overly difficult, and once the novelty of actually physically picking up gears and slotting them into position myself wore out, there became yet another minor obstacle on the way to the next combat encounter or story moment. That story is serviceable, but one that is definitely engineered in order to facilitate big moments and fun cameos, rather than tell a layered tale itself the way the previous two Horizons have. Here you play as Reyes rather than Aloy. He's a Shadow Carja rebel who must complete a series of tasks in order to atone for his crimes. His internal monologues are mercifully limited in a smart maneuver that allows you to experience this world firsthand yourself and not be distracted by voices in your head. Naturally, things escalate as the plot thickens, and the second half of the campaign becomes much more engaging than the first, thanks to the action increasing in both quality and quantity. A personal highlight is the aforementioned Thunderjaw cat and mouse section, which conjures up memories of Jurassic Park at its rousing best. There are a few little nods scattered throughout for big Horizon fans to find a value here. Familiar faces like Aloy drop in to say hello, for example, but don't necessarily come in expecting a dense new chapter in this universe's lore. Outside the main story, you're free to explore your small home base, take a closer look at artifacts collected on your expeditions, and chat with friends made along the way. It's also home to the Pleasant Safari mode, a largely tranquil alternative version of the opening boat cruise, which shows off a selection of the Horizon beastry in its natural habitat. It's short, sweet, and a reflection of the Disneyland-like nature of Call of the Mountain as a whole. An impressive technical showcase for PSVR 2, which uses the inherent wonders of the Horizon world to sprinkle thrills into its sometimes lazy river ride. Horizon.
So like, to be clear, it doesn't look bad, but the question is, does this justify like $550? And like after this, I guess we can look up what other games are launching on this day one. But the whole point is like, while it might be like, just because it's not worth buying now, doesn't mean it won't be worth it in the future. Like it can be a pass for now, but if in 6 months there's more games, then it could be worth it, right? Like it's the same thing and conversation we had with the Switch when the Switch launched. If the Breath of the Wild had been anything less than a 10, I think the argument was very compelling that that was the Switch and Breath of the Wild were a wait. Because at the time, the Switch had no games lined up. It had very little third-party support. It had like nothing going for it except for these random little like what was it, snipper clips or something like that. They had a bunch of really weird random games that were available for it on day one. But it was pretty clear, like, okay, if Breath of the Wild is anything less than a must play, like an amazing game, then the Switch just isn't really worth it. But Breath of the Wild ended up being so great that it was like so good, it was worth getting a $300 console just to play it. And I put so much time into it that I would have been happy if the Switch only played Breath of the Wild. I played so much Breath of the Wild that for me it would have ended up being worth it. But he's about to go into the verdict. If this thing is anything less than like a 10, I just don't see how you can justify spending $550 because there is other content coming for the PSVR 2, but I haven't heard anything else discussed that's of note other than this. So this seems to be like the flagship that will justify it. Let's see.
Call of the Mountain's exciting highs elevate it just enough above its often monotonous climbing mechanics to create a fun first blockbuster scale entry into the PSVR 2 library. Through intuitive design, awesome spectacle, and gripping combat, Horizon's first step into virtual reality is one packed with exciting encounters that its slower stretches may sometimes detract from, but never threaten to derail completely. It's an enjoyable, if not essential chapter of the Horizon story.
I mean, I don't know how you can argue that that's worth that much. I don't know. What about the PSVR 2 as a console? Is it so good that it's worth getting just for its own sake? It's a sexy controller. Sunny.
It's a thrill when we get to say this about a new piece of gaming hardware. The PlayStation VR 2 is a true generational leap that makes the old one look like a piece of junk. It's not exactly cheap, but...
That wasn't that hard. I tried the original PSVR once at like a friend's house who we went to visit. I'll tell the story of that time. There was a... weird stuff happened at that friend's house. It was really weird. But I tried this once, and I did not think it was very good. So I guess it's not that hard to beat, especially like in the age of the Quest 2 and the Valve Index and stuff. There's some really good stuff.
For $549.99, you get a high-end headset with a 4K HDR-enabled OLED
Hold on. There's like...
screen, a 110-degree field of view, built-in...
Oh, God. That's going to drive me crazy. Can you guys hear that? It's only when we play the video, so it's in the audio of the video. There's like a super freaking high pitched.
tracking cameras and eye tracking.
Oh God, that's gonna give me a migraine. You guys, Jackson can hear it. It's gonna like break my brain. I don't know if I can. Let's just watch the Digital Foundry one. I feel like a crazy person. You guys hear the beeps? You guys hear this? The loud, high pitched squeaks? Yeah, I'm just. Sometimes having decent audio kind of drives me crazy. I hear that in my brain. Yeah, it's like it's bad. It's probably headphone users only. But like that's an oopsie to put out a video like that. Okay, let's see. ACG. Yeah, ACG's got one.
VR ecosystem can be a daunting step to get into. Unlike a game that you can just put down, VR is a hardware step in addition to the platform, and judge not only on what it can do, but how easily that it does it, how well it mimics other functions, and how good the sense of presence is. Standalone versus wired is a battle that's going to rage until compression somehow takes that out of the equation. And the PSVR 2 joins the wired headset VR family very soon. The PSVR 2 comes in the mid to high price range, $549 for the system alone, with tracked haptic controllers via internal cameras, high eye tracking fidelity built in, combined with hopefully Sony's excellent understanding of comfort, and merging it all together into a system that feels natural with the PlayStation 5. Thanks to Sony for the review unit. As you guys know, that means I buy a unit of my own and I will give it away to one of the watchers, as actually putting out my money on these things is really the only way to feel if it's worth it or not. No freebies here. PSVR 2 is Sony's gamble into the otherwise strangely fragmented VR ecosystem, especially when they originally announced it to now, where Meta once reigned, its own price increase slowed the market, and then the delivery of its next-gen version so outpriced as to be a different consumer type completely ended up showing that VR didn't have the best future. Strangely, AR and video eyeglasses like Nreal Air have been getting greater fanfare, but Xbox long ago canceled their own plans, and Sony is the remaining unit put together on consoles to do this. Enter the PSVR.
I know this is random. I cannot stand how PlayStation has packaged their stuff this generation. It's so bad. It's so boring and uninspired. It's just like all white, basic cardboard, like little twist ties. It's so unexciting. At least the Xbox, you unbox the Series X and you open it up and it's like, oh, it's like in its own little display case in the box. I'm not talking to you. Stop it. Siri thinks everything's about her.
Design. Inside the box, you're going to find the controllers, the headset, the cable for the headset, and additions for the music, which I'll talk about in a second. For each controller, it weighs about 174 to 176 grams, and it's 560 for the headset itself. Quest 2 is about 503, and Reverb is about 544, just for clarification. The PSVR has a single head strap with a thick padded backing that fits just below the midpoint of the back of the head, with the tension dial to tighten the strap as well as adjustments for distance for the lens away from your eyes. It is plastic. It's the same slightly rough exterior that the DualSense uses, and it also has an accordion-style gasket between the user's face and the front of the goggles to block out light. This is one of the better systems I've ever seen for a face gasket in VR. There really is no light bleed at all to speak of around the edges of the lenses, because Sony decided to use 2 or 3 soft layers like double curtains, removing the pressure of one stiffer material, and instead has this accordion gate style, and it works insanely well. Much has been said about the headset
I also love that it's replaceable. I think that's awesome.
being wired. It is tethered. There's not much to discuss here. You'll notice it, and all the negatives that come with a tethered device will pop up here, especially spinning around, twisting, stepping on the cable. Those are going to happen. But when it comes to the comfort of the headset itself, it's actually very nice. It rests just exactly where you would want. You also have a pass-through ability for you to not have to lift up that front end at all. It's a one-button press on the actual headset so that you can see around the room if you don't want to take it off. Those all work, even though, admittedly, that view is a little bit odd and off-putting. Lastly, the PSVR 2 does have a small fan inside the system that blows inside the unit, cooling the chip as well as removing heat from the headset, and that goes a long ways for comfort. Now, when you grab the controllers, the first thing you notice is that they're just a massive improvement to those from the original PSVR. That's like saying a headache is better than smashing your head with a rock, but that's the way it is. Sony's design team...
A headache is better than smashing your head with a rock. Yeah, I guess. Let's get past the hardware.
Audio, I think that was awesome. May not be to everyone's spec. I know a lot of people are starting to like the audio systems that are built into the sides of these VR systems, but personally, I thought this was really good. Now, once you put the system on and you start playing it, the first thing you're going to notice is, of course, the picture quality after the comfort. The PSVR 2 is using an OLED screen with 2000 by 2040 per eye resolution and a refresh rate of 90 to 120. While not the highest resolution of all the headsets that we can test are out there, it's a massive step up from the PSVR, and more importantly, this means that when gaming, the resolution is much closer to an HD display than you would normally see on a headset. And that comes into play the moment you decide that you want to just jump into a normal game and play that game without taking the headset off. It is a huge boon. Second screen works for this. The original looked pretty good, whether viewing full VR content or normal games, though. The PSVR 2 has a picture quality that is actually outstanding for what you would expect when looking at a console that's just displaying your Hogwarts or your God of War.
I mean, it sounds like just across the board, the hardware is really, really good. And I don't think that there's much of a question there. It's just a matter of whether or not there's content for it to justify, again, $500. Let's see. This is the list. VR2, 13 new titles and launch lineup. Okay. So, launch window lineup. Launch window, I don't know what launch window. 30 games on track for release starting February 22nd. So I don't know what starting means. I mean, so this stuff could be coming out 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Okay. Moss Book 2, Pro Era, No Man's Sky, Synth Remastered, Tentacular. Wow. Onagoro, Tetris. Wow. That's a get. Thumper, Something Retribution, What the Bat, Zenith, a Star Wars game that I think he just showed. It looked kind of shaky. Moss, The Light Brigade, Song in the Smoke, Last Clockwinder, Rizu, RE Village, Pavlov, Pistol Whip, GT7 could be cool. I'll give him that. GT7, After the Fall, that's on the Quest 2. I've tried that. That's decent. I actually kind of like After the Fall, so that's something to play. I mean, out of all of these, I would say the only ones that I would be interested in trying would be After the Fall, GT7, Horizon, probably. That would be cool to check out. And then I don't know, maybe RE Village could be really cool. Jurassic Park, like that's could be cool. But the thing I've noticed, like VR titles tend to be very short if they're linear stuff, like high fidelity stuff. RE7 too, yeah. Is that on here? Did I just miss it? I don't see it. I guess it's coming. Maybe it's embedded in this. I don't know. But like the other piece of this too, and I know that a lot of people who are looking at this as PlayStation fans are probably not going to think of it this way. Like After the Fall is available on the Quest 2. It is available on like every other major VR headset. So if you're looking at just shopping for a VR headset, a lot of this stuff is not going to probably be like a console seller. Because No Man's Sky, After the Fall, you can play elsewhere. I don't know if RE Village VR is console exclusive. It probably is. Because RE7 was console exclusive. No, didn't they bring... Or did they cancel it? PC VR for that. I don't actually remember. Did they ever bring Resident Evil 7's VR to PC, or did they cancel that? Sony missing a big piece of the pie by not doing PC support. That's PC VR gamers as well as VR porters. Yeah, I mean, let's be real. That's a lot of people. It is. There's a mod for the PC, but it's not official. Okay. Because I was like, I could have sworn there was some scandalous thing with that long-term support. You can play with Vorpex. Okay. I don't know. It's, to me, honestly, like, if you're shopping for VR, this is a 7 out of 10 according to IGN. What I heard from Carrick from ACG, my Call of the Mountain review is that it's not a great VR game and it's not a very good Horizon game either. He was not a fan, not a huge fan. So, like, reviewers, nobody's saying this is like a 10 out of 10. There's no consensus like Breath of the Wild that this is a console seller. So everything else, like After the Fall is fine. GT7 VR, I'm sure is pretty cool. No Man's Sky, it's not exclusive or anything, so it's not really a console seller. And then Resident Evil VR stuff, I guess, could maybe be a console seller for you. But for me personally, none of this is doing it for me. None of that's doing it for me. He took my thing.